Hello, and welcome to the College Basketball Saturday Hardwood Show. We are balls deep into conference play. We're here in mid-January. We're back after a couple weeks off for the holidays for those Saturday NFL slates at the end of the season and so on. I'm back here with Gavin. What's going on, man? Thanks for waking up early again for us.
Yeah, 152 games, man. We got a long one today, that's for sure.
Yeah, we aren't as restricted for time today, so I know Gav's happy about that. He has a bunch of game notes. Just wanted to say here at the jump, here at Run Pure, I do a playbook every day for college basketball, which is game thoughts, player notes on every player in my pool. And right now we're running a promo code Boynton15. That's BOYNTON 15. Gets you 15% off for the next 30 days for new members. And that includes the SaberSim Optimizer package. We got NFL Wild Card going on this weekend, NBA Daily. There's a UFC card tonight. PGA season's ramping back up, NHL. So join us for, the next couple months are super busy. So we'd love to have you on board. Gavin, before we get into the games, I just kind of wanted your quick thoughts on kind of the state of what's going on in college. We haven't seen anyone in a couple weeks on a show, so just kind of overall thoughts, maybe what you've gotten right and wrong, with our preseason prediction, and just kind of general thoughts or anything that stands out for you.
Yeah, man, where to even start on that? I think we've seen now a handing of the mantle back and forth between a couple teams at the number one ranking. I think Houston still is clearly above some of those, the Purdue's and the UConns of the world. But they've kind of come out flat in a couple of their games too, that they're not going to get away with in the tourney that they can in conference play. So, we'll see how it shakes out. I think they'll probably still end up being, the one overall seed. But, you got, I think, a couple teams that are really surging, like a Kansas, UCLA, that we didn't really expect to be fighting for the one line. And here we are. We got a lot of teams in the mix. Look at Xavier, undefeated in the Big East. Like, incredible first year from Sean Miller. Like, there's a ton of storylines to get into.
Yeah, and a couple are on the slate today. We talked about how we thought we were higher than the field on Kansas State, who's getting picked last in the Big 12. They've got Marquise Noel and Key Johnson just rolling right now, but a tough, stiff road test against probably an angry TCU team. But we'll get into that later. We got 12 games here, so let's dive right in. Starting off, we could do half an hour on what's going on with Kentucky. Kentucky is now at Tennessee. Impossible spot here for Kentucky, Gavin. So they started the season number one at KenPom, right? They're down to 44th. Tennessee, however, up at second at KenPom. He has this lined Tennessee 73, Kentucky 59. I see sportsbooks have Tennessee laying 12 at a 132 total. What do you got? Thoughts, quick thoughts on Kentucky overall and what's going on there, and then game thoughts.
Yeah, if COVID hit the world today and the season stopped, Kentucky wouldn't make the tournament. They have more quad 4 losses than quad 1 wins. So now they have to rally in Knoxville against what is looking like, from the metrics and analytics, a historically good defense in Tennessee, even better than the years past. The 82.8 adjusted defensive efficiency metric is mind-bogglingly low and good. So yeah, for a team that can't shoot outside or who doesn't shoot outside very frequently in Kentucky, Tennessee is going to force you to shoot it over the top of them. They're going to beat the shit out of you inside. And a Kentucky team that, if they're not circling the wagons here, they're going to get run out by 20 plus again. It's not going to be just downhill severe wheeler drives. It's not just going to be dumping into Oscar and let him go, because Tennessee is going to challenge him on the glass. It's a tough spot for him. So yeah, lines come down like 2.5 points. I'd almost want to take a little stab at Tennessee. I just don't see how this Kentucky team is able to rally short of just kind of historic 3-point shooting game from like a Frederick plus Reeves plus Severe, especially because, I don't really know Cason's status here. He left last game with back spasms. That's not always a injury I want to be playing guys right after, because they can flare up pretty easily. So, they're They could be DOA here if they don't fight for their lives.
Yeah, we had said last week that we'd be hard pressed to roster basically anyone against Tennessee the rest of the season. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but they're on pace to have the best defensive efficiency in the Ken Palm era. So
Yeah, 82.8 is insane, dude.
yeah. So on a 12 game slate, is there anyone that you're looking at? We see Oscar here at 11K. We saw CJ Frederick come back last game. He's still cheap. I just I'm not sure if I want to use someone against Tennessee on a 12 game slate, and B, I'm not sure if I trust Coach Cal right now with anyone outside of Oscar.
Yeah, Toppin missing last game kind of thrust Damian Collins into the fold. Lance Ware almost came back, but I would still much rather take a shooter over a big, preferably against Tennessee. Like, Frederick can definitely score over the top of a Ncaa or of a Scovey. It's going to be much more difficult for some of those bigs like the Wares, the Collins of the world to really manufacture a lot of points inside. It's just going to be brutal against that Tennessee defense, and they're not going to have kind of the rebounding advantage that they've had in games prior. So yeah, I'm probably off Oscar in this spot. I'm with you in terms. I just cross teams off usually against Tennessee and Houston, but I could see Frederick if Kayson's out. Frederick's definitely in play. Not as much Reeves because I think they're just similar plays, and you take the Frederick savings.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then on the Tennessee side, I think their issue for DFS. I kind of feel like this was the issue with Baylor last year, right, Gavin? They just have too many solid players, and because of that, Barnes is running this deep rotation. He isn't needing to push Vescovy or any of those guys past 30 minutes just because they're beating the shit out of everyone. I think both of us think that they kind of cruise to a 10+ point win here. Is there any plays on or is there anyone that stands out on the Tennessee side for you? I think Vescovy would probably be my favorite. It's tough for me to get there on a huge slate if he's not going to see 30 minutes, like if they just beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, and there's some really good low 7K guard plays too. So you're playing them over some of the better plays of the slate. So I'm probably going to full fade. No, I know I'm going to full fade in a main lineup scenario. I would have Frederick and a little bit of GPPs, and if you want to sprinkle in a little Vescovy, go for it. But yeah, it's really hard to play him, especially with got to remember Josiah Jordan James coming back. He's also in the fold as well. It's just hard for those guys to see their ceilings with the lack of the full minute.
All right, well, let's move on to Seton Hall, DePaul, Big East game here. Ken Palm's got Seton Hall ranked 54th, DePaul 137th. He's got this line, Seton Hall 71-67 on the road. Any overall game thoughts here?
Yeah, DePaul, they're off that surprise-ish kind of win versus Nova, where they shot 50% from the field, 39% from three, and got to the line 20 times, which is pretty unusual when you play Nova. Just getting that many attempts definitely speaks to how DePaul is relatively reliant on trying to get downhill and get some of these driving guards going, whether it's Emoji Gibson, creating for himself or creating for others. But Seton Hall off 2 straight wins too, albeit against Butler and a banged up Georgetown. They're now on the second leg of a back-to-back road trip, with 2 wins under their belt. Where they were at kind of a desperation spot a few games ago. Now they're, just around 500. So the thing is, it's a great stylistic matchup for Seton Hall. Their only offense is getting to the rim, offensive rebounds, and free throw attempts. This team, outside of Dawes, chucking up threes.
Yeah, no one can shoot.
They're pretty brutal, yeah. And DePaul's allowing the 309th offensive rebound rate because their desire to run in transition, and they're 278th in defensive foul rate. So, and they're also a rim funnel defense, top 300 in defensive 3-point rate. So that bodes well for Seton Hall's offense. This game, I could see getting up and down a little bit pace wise, but both teams are both teams are very press heavy and don't have the greatest trustworthy ball handlers. So it could be an inefficient game, but could have a little bit of pace. Still think there's some spots we can look to.
Yeah, we've seen Emoji Gibson have some big time boom games and some games where he's let particularly us down. He's playing max minutes. Like him and Javon Johnson are going to play the whole game. But at the high sevens, I think there are some really good plays in the 7K range. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to either of them on a main team. I think for sure I would rather play Kadari Richmond over both of them, Gavin. Any thoughts on Kadari here? We've seen him finally get to like the 30-minute mark. He was hovering in the mid-20s pretty frustratingly early in the season. His assist rate has kind of skyrocketed since they've kind of said, here's the team, here's the keys, go at it. It's a pace up. DePaul's top 70 in pace. So I think Kadari's clearly my favorite play here. We've seen his price come down a bit too.
Yeah, I love Kadari in the spot. Look at this price, he 4.5x last game. It was against Georgetown, but he also did it with 4 real points. So it shows you what kind of upside he has, especially not only with the steals, but even kind of hunting triple doubles. Some games, there is a little bit lower floor just inherently with some of these Seton Hall guys, just the way that Shaheen can kind of muck rotations up and get a little funky at times. They got a lot of bodies to throw out there. So I think Kadari is definitely the priority play for me in this game. And then, but yeah, Emoji Gibson, Javon Johnson, you're definitely mixing in for GPP purposes. Outside of that, I don't know if I really want to get to many of the value guys here. Even a Trey Jackson coming off a couple of boom games, maybe, but I just think there's better budgets in the context of the slate here. But maybe like an Alamir Dawes gets hot from 3. So you mix him in as a game stack piece. But yeah, that's probably where I'm at with this one.
Yeah. All right. Well, while we're in between games, why don't we field a question from the chat? Andrew Martinez wants you to explain what the fuck is up with Texas Tech.
They suck. What do you mean?
Yeah, if you watched our Big 12 preview, we were very low on Texas Tech. Gavin, in particular, picked them to finish last in the Big 12. So awesome call by him. They've been awful. I think they have no quad 1, 2, or 3 wins either. So
yeah, they do. Fardaws is back and practicing, so we'll see what he can provide. But yeah, when you're reliant on a team led by Davion Harmon and Pop Isaacs in the backcourt in the most difficult conference in the country, you're going to inherently struggle.
Yep. All right, let's move on to a really good game for DFS here. We've seen Miami games just really shoot out lately. They are at NC State today. Ken Palm's got Miami 41st, NC State 35th. He's got this lined NC State 79-76. So lots of points expected here. What do you think overall about the tempo of this game context type of stuff?
Yeah, we'll definitely see some pace here. NC State off 2 pretty impressive wins with the Duke beatdown at home and then winning at Virginia Tech. Now, the key for me with NC State here is now back at home with a full week of rest when Miami just played 3 days ago against kind of a physical BC team. And with how thin NC State is depth-wise, I think that really helps them with the 7-day kind of rest. And this is another conference rematch we have. Miami won 80-73 at home. That was NC State's first game without Mahorcic. And I think we'll see a little bit better adjustments from Kevin Keats. NC State pressing at the 97th percentile in the country. And shockingly, wow, Miami is getting pressed at the 99th percentile. That was shocking to me, how much they're getting pressed with all the guards that they have. But, we'll probably see it here. They did it plenty, the first go around. So, now I think Greg Gant moves probably more into the fold here. DJ Burns, I don't think DJ Burns is a very good basketball player at all. And this is the kind of guy that Omier used to feast on at Arkansas State with his face-up game, with the athleticism. But I've also been wrong on this show, a couple weeks ago about DJ Burns, and he just blew down the slate. He also pooed all over Duke. So I guess I'm just going to be wrong on him going forward. But great game that we're going to have to target. If you want to look game stack wise, definitely a spot to do it as well.
Yeah, I'll do the Miami side. We've seen Isaiah Wong in good game environments put up just massive scores. The issue is he's 9,100, right? Like he's priced close to the elite plays of the slate, the elite plays in the country. I kind of like him if you're stacking up this game. I mean, there's probably 9 guys in play for this game. So if you're making a bunch of teams or you're playing the queue or something, I think, this is definitely a game that could score into the 80s. It's a game that could go to overtime. So yeah, I think Wong's in play here. Streaky player though, so have that in mind. Jordan Miller, I think, is my favorite play on Miami's side at 7,300, 37 minutes in back-to-back games. He's kind of like their Swiss Army knife, right? Stuffs the stat sheet like a glue guy type of thing with some upside there at that price. Nigel Pack, 6'3", scoring reliant guard. I think he's a game stack kind of piece too. And then Norchad at 8'4", that's your guy. He's played better than I expected in the ACC. Kind of like a walking double double right now. 32% rebound rate last 3 games. So I think all 4 of those guys are in play for Miami. Not sure if I'm going to use any on like a main team, but definitely in play for tournaments. What are your thoughts there? And then thoughts on NC State? We have a question in chat from Cubby Queen 44 about Turk Smith. I think he's going to be a nice play today.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd be interested in Jordan Miller, but I kind of thought the same thing too. Like the no Jack Clark really softens up Miller's matchup here. Um, and we've seen NC State in the half court get gashed going downhill by bigger wings. So like it does bode well with him. I kind of wish he had positional versatility because there's a ton of good guards, like I said, in that low 7K range. But I think he'd be more of a leverage pivot to some of the popular guys we'll discuss later in that range. But great play nonetheless. Same with Omir. I won't get to Wong. Like I can't pay 9K for a guard not named like Jalen Pickett personally, but yeah, I guess you can play him a little bit. I think Greg Gant is still in play, even at 5K, dude. He's brought kind of a defensive intensity down low that they lost with kind of crazy Mahorcic going out.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of a psycho down there, whether he was going to get a technical or a flagrant any given play. And Gant kind of brings that, and they're definitely going to need it against Omir in this spot, or else he's just going to body him all game. So I'm out. I think Gant's in play. Not much ceiling at 5K. It's probably more of a cash play, frankly, or a game stack piece. But I don't think we just go away from him just because he's up to 5K.
Yeah, my only issue with Gant is that he's just not shooting, right? He's getting there just purely on rebounds and stocks, which I guess you can at that price. That's fine. I don't think I'll get to Duona here just because it's a larger slate. And Omir could really bully ball him, right? Any last thoughts on the game here?
Yeah, Turk is my favorite play in this game. Like, I'll probably be using him on main line. I mean, 19 shot attempts in what 4 of his last 5. So back at home, the only worry you have with him is like sometimes Joyner and Morcell can just like get really chuck happy,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it brings his shot rate down. But if he's going to get 17 plus shots, he should be getting to 35 plus fantasy points pretty easily here.
Any thoughts on playing Joyner over Turk if Turk is going to be super popular, or just you just want to lock in the 20 shots from Turk in a massive total?
I don't want to play Joyner at 8K, frankly. Like I need more of a $900 discount to go from Turk to Joyner.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to an interesting game. Lots of people on both sides of this game in the betting community. That's also something that we should talk about as we're going through games. If you have any bets, Gavin, make sure to let the people know. We got West Virginia at OU here. West Virginia 27th at Ken Pom. I think that's way too high. Oklahoma 28th. Ken Pom's got it. Oklahoma 70 to 67. I've bet Oklahoma on this or in this spot. I think you have. I'm not sure. There are people that I know that are on the West Virginia side. I just don't believe in this West Virginia team. We saw them kind of bully people towards the end of non-conference, but they are getting pushed around in conference play. They're 0-4 in conference. I think we had them towards the bottom of the conference, bottom three to start the season. So I think that this current KenPom rating is a bit inflated. Any overall thoughts there? And then what about this game stylistically?
Yeah, West Virginia's off 4 straight losses. Now, the last 3 were all analytical wins, kind of funny enough. But West Virginia hasn't won a road Big 12 game in like 700 calendar days, dude. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Almost 2 years, pretty much. So, yeah, do I feel great about him here spot wise? No, especially when you get to the stylistic stuff. OU, one of the top 30 defensive transition rates in terms of they just don't allow people to run on them. Part of that is because they just don't send anybody to the offensive glass.
Right.
And West Virginia is 299th in half-court offense points per possession. So that bodes really well for OU. They're going to make them play a slow-down half-court game. And there weren't many on-off splits when I looked at the Keidry and Johnson stuff. It's pretty much negligible. Like, +3 here, -3 on the other side, +6 minus. It really wasn't much to speak of. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I got an OU at 2.5. I think it's up to 3 or 3.5 at this point. They're going to play low scoring, greasy games, so I'd really want that extra point. But at 3, it's probably bettable. At 3.5, I'm probably just betting a small amount, like a tiny little wager on it.
Yeah, I got in right at the 3, so I think 3 or less is fine. On the DFS side, for OU, we've seen the freshman Uzan play a ton lately, 37 and 35 minutes last 2 games. He's still sitting under 5K. I'd like him a decent amount here. Like you said, it's not the best game environment, but West Virginia's going to pace him up a bit. They're top half in pace, whereas OU is bottom 50. And just watching their last few games, it seems like he's getting more and more comfortable, right? Wasn't shooting that much to start, was just being a true facilitator. But the shot rate has increased the last couple games. Let me pull it up here. So he has an 8% shot rate on the season, 14% shot rate last 3 games. So I think that's part of him getting more and more comfortable. I think the role is super safe. And I think he's got good upside for under 5K, good player. Any thoughts on him? And then any other plays in this game? I know that you like Sherfield. We've talked about him the last couple slates, but haven't pulled the trigger. He's been playing really, really well, a ton of minutes, and his price hasn't moved.
Yeah, Uzan's fine. I think he's kind of similar-ish to Gant in that at that range, I think he's really safe to get like 15, but I don't really see a high probability of them going over like a 25 or something like that, more than 5x. So yeah, I'm fine with Uzan. But yeah, I think Sherfield's going to be the premier play on this slate, or not the slate, in this game. And definitely in the mix that we're going to have to decide between those 7K guards, like we've talked about. Keep in mind, OU 93rd percentile points per possession press offense. So we'll see if West Virginia wants to try and press them. They've had pretty good success doing that. So yeah, I think that's probably where you start on the first 2 guys, and then West Virginia gets pretty hairy with the rotation with Keidry back. I don't know if I might just cross off West Virginia in all honesty.
Yeah, I think you can do that. I listed Trey Mitchell in the playbook just because he's playing a ton of minutes right now, and the rebound rate is just awesome. I think he's coming off. He had 15 or 16 last game. It's just a tough matchup at OU, and with my bet on OU, I think I'd just rather fade West Virginia. I think that they get beat here. Let's move on. Next game, Georgia Ole Miss. 2 kind of sneaky good defensive teams this year, especially the Ole Miss side. I think I'm fading Georgia here. KenPom's got Georgia 88th, Ole Miss 84th. He's got the game Ole Miss 68-64. Any overall thoughts here?
Yeah, interesting. UGA, or I guess Georgia just beat Mississippi State at home. They also just beat Auburn at home recently. They've also lost to Wake by 10, Georgia Tech by 2, and Florida by 7 in their only 3 road games. So been much better at home than on the road. And, Ole Miss at the same time has 5, they're off 5 straight losses. That includes everything from North Alabama to Alabama. Mississippi State, Auburn, Tennessee. That's a pretty brutal stretch, to start conference play. And then Ole Miss, now they get Georgia. They play at South Carolina next. And then they don't play another team inside the KenPom top 100 for like a literal month. Big circle the wagon spot for them right here. I bet them last game against Auburn because I want to fade Auburn away from their yard. But I think I was probably a game early. I think this is the spot that you really look to get an Ole Miss team with Georgia, being a little overinflated from those Mississippi State and Auburn home wins. So yeah, I think interesting stylistic matchup. Should be a really just ugly, greasy game though with the Kermit Davis amoeba zone. Georgia not being the greatest outside shooting team outside of Terry Roberts getting hot. So I think this is going to be one of the uglier games of the slate for sure.
Yeah, on a 12 gamer, I think I'm just going to cross off Georgia here against the zone, like you said. On the Ole Miss side, I think you played Brakefield last time they were on the slate. His role has really increased lately. The minutes are there. Former Duke 5-star, I believe, playing his best basketball this season right now. I think he's in play. And then the freshman TJ Caldwell at 3,100. I think if you're building a bunch of lineups, I think you can play him. He's currently starting, playing low 20s minutes for super cheap. Wanted to get your thoughts on Brakefield, just kind of in the context of the slate in the mid 5Ks. It's kind of a dead zone. So, like if you end up there, do you mind using Brakefield as like a last man in?
My first build had Brakefield last man in, so this is an interesting conversation. I think he's okay as a last man in. They're so starved of outside shooting that he's been kind of a nice changeup to the defensive player of the years from all their mid-major conferences, of the Akwubas of the world, the Imbalas, and the Miles Burns. So yeah, I mean, Brakefield's finding that role as a stretch and being pretty involved in the offense. I think the fact that Deshaun Ruffin clearly is not healthy or back to where he was, last season post, I think it was knee injury, means that Brakefield has to take more of a role in this offense. Like this Ole Miss offense is dog. It's bad. And Brakefield's going to have to hit some shots from the outside. Mike White's going to pack it in. So yeah, I think it's okay. It's not something I'm building around, but I'd be all right with it as last man.
Yeah, we've seen the minutes and the rebound rate kind of tick up. So I think his floor is actually really good here. I just kind of question the ceiling on such a huge slate. Let's move on. Big game in the Big 10. A couple teams that are skidding. Wisconsin 56 at KenPom, Indiana 33rd at KenPom. He's got this IU 71-66. Both teams have lost a couple in a row. Wisconsin without Tyler Wall, of course. They're calling it a game time decision here. I'm not sure if I quite buy that. I haven't seen that he's practiced at all, Gavin. Any thoughts on on Wall being out, and then on this game in general? Indiana, pretty desperate home spot here.
Yeah, I mean, how far can Indiana fall off 3 straight losses and just got the doors blown off by Penn State when Penn State shot like 57% from 3, which is, obviously hurting them not having Xavier Johnson and at least Race Thompson on the defensive end. I don't know what Race gave you offensively most games, but, Wisconsin, they're going to, what they're going to do. They're going to pack it in. They're going to wall off the rim with Crowell, and they're going to force you to shoot over the top. But Indiana, 316 3-point rate, and they're 301st in percentage of points that come from 3. So I put in our Discord about, oh my God, Jacob Toppin getting some pregame work. Jesus Christ. I was talking about Indiana's expected shooting regression. Like they were on par with Penn State, but I know like Penn State has a lot of legit shooters and Indiana doesn't.
Yeah.
Jalen Hood-Schifino was like 20 of 25 from three following his injury returning. So I think we're going to see some pullback in that matter from his 3-point efficiency. I don't know if it snaps back in one game, but it's coming. And yeah, I think if I'm going to bet this game, I think I kind of like the under. This game is going to be fucking disgusting, man. Like Wisconsin needs Wall so bad here, and could have exploited the no Race Thompson pretty well in the post, but now without him, you're highly relying on Chucky Hepburn and now Crowell against Trace Jackson Davis. Doesn't really bode well, I think, for Wisconsin in the spot. But Wisconsin seems like they're going to play every game within one possession, no matter if they're 10-point dogs or 10-point favorites.
Yeah, just a scrappy team. They're definitely going to slow it down, muck it up. Do you think IU can pace them up? We've seen Indiana really play with pace. They're 71st in tempo. Do you think Wisconsin can get paced up here on the road at IU? Or do you think that they just muck it up?
I think they're going to play like Wisconsin does. Like they'll let IU run if they want to try and run and hoist up some questionable shots in transition, but I was still going to walk it up every time. They're going to run their off-ball flex screens, and they're going to try to get Chucky Hepburn into the paint somehow. So yeah, it's just I think it's just a bad all-around matchup for both offenses, frankly. But yeah, definitely Wisconsin without Wall.
Yeah, so one of the big decisions of the slate is, do you want to play TJD here? He's at 10K. We've seen the usage has just been ridiculous without Race and without Xavier Johnson. The projection is awesome, but he's up over 10K here in a pace down spot. I think with the blowout the other night, his minutes were held down a bit. I think I would expect 36 plus here. He's going to be popular. What are your thoughts on him in this spot specifically?
Yeah, I don't like playing guys against Wisconsin. It's not because Crowell is just some defensive stopper like a Kalkbrenner, but it's just more of the kind of defensive mentality of how Wisconsin plays, where Trace is going to get auto doubled every single play, and it's going to be. He's going to have to be moving the ball, around the perimeter. He's going to be, but that gives him some peripheral upside. I think you're playing him. Like, I think you're just taking the 35 to 40 points. It's probably 40. I think even in a slow game, This could be just a brick fest as well. So there might be a lot of rebounding opportunities if both teams are really inefficient. So with the amount of value we have, I think I'm just going to play him.
Yeah,
especially with my brand too. I have to. I can't not just jam studs every slate.
Right. Yeah. Not the same team. Obviously, we saw him struggle at Wisconsin last year, and then just absolutely shit on them at home. 38-6 last year. I think there's just so much usage that needs to be soaked up, and he's just gonna touch the ball literally every possession. So outside of TJD, we saw Trey Galloway slide into the starting lineup. I used him on that last slate. I was pretty happy with his minutes and usage. He's still at 3.6 here. Do you have any interest in a Galloway or like a Geronimo off the bench? Both guys under 4K here.
I think Galloway's still fine. I'm definitely Galloway over Geronimo.
Yeah.
In this spot. I will not be going back to the Carter Gilmore sweepstakes. I can guarantee you that. Yeah, so I think I would order it probably Galloway, Geronimo. I guess Bates is a little more expensive, but yeah, probably Galloway, Geronimo, Bates.
Yeah, Gilmore just I put in the playbook. Is going to play about 30 minutes, but he's literally afraid to shoot the basketball. So can't play guys like that on a 12-game slate. Let's go to an interesting game here. Arkansas at Vandy. Arkansas 14th at Ken Pom. That's too high with their current roster. Vandy 96th. Ken Pom's got Arkansas 73-67. We've seen the line go towards Vandy. Let me double check the current line right now. It is 3.5. So that's a pretty tight spread for Arkansas against a pretty bad Vandy team here. Overall thoughts on this game? We saw Muss fuck with the starting lineup, with the rotations. I think it's borderline panic time for Muss, kind of like what's going on with Kentucky right now. You lose a couple guys. Arkansas has lost 3 of 4 here. They're at they're at Vandy and then at Mizzou, so like they could lose 4 of 5 here. What do you think overall about this game?
Yeah, if you remove a top 7 pick from any given team, plus another guy who's probably going to be a first rounder prior to his injury in Brazil, like yeah, team's going to struggle. I mean, they're 1-3 in their last 4 versus Ken Palm top 100 teams without Nick Smith. Now Vandy's 97th, so barely in there, but I think speaks to kind of the lack of high end punch and talent that they're lacking, without those guys. So Vandy's off 2 straight losses, but they also covered, and both were on the road. Now they come back home, and I think the main thing that people are really harping on is, we've talked about the Jerry Stackhouse, the high off screen action, running shooters through a bunch of screens, probably like Jerry wanted to do back in the day. And they do that at the 6th highest rate in the country. Arkansas 275th points per possession defending that action. So while they have great one-on-one individual defenders, they get really lost in screens away from the ball. So, Vandy should be able to exploit that. I tend to think this line is starting to get a little bit close, and people are probably a game or two late on Arkansas when probably should have been on them versus Bama. But yeah, it's probably right, at that 4.5 mark. So it should be a pretty tight game, but I think probably lower scoring too. Vandy's going to slow it up, and they're probably going to zone Arkansas, who's been having trouble getting zoned last couple games.
Yeah, Arkansas has no one that can shoot. That is really showing without Nick Smith. We have a question in the chat about going back to Mikel Mitchell if he starts again. I mean, he smashed last game at 3Ks at 3-4 here. We know the foul risk. I don't trust Muss, especially when they're losing games, right? Because, if the wind blows the wrong way, a guy could play 2 minutes or 25. But he is cheap, and, guys with his rates aren't priced at 3-4 if they're starting. So thoughts on him, and then just thoughts on the DFS plays in this game. We're seeing Liam Robbins come off the bench for no reason for Vandy. He's clearly their best player, playing about 25 a game. I think it's I honestly think it's because Stackhouse promised minutes in recruiting to 14 different guys, so he's got to play them all every game. So yeah, I mean, Robbins would be an absolute smash if he ever started and played 30. I just don't think he's going to. But even at 25 minutes at 7-2, I think he's an interesting tournament play, like a guy to use in the qualifier or something.
And Arkansas they're gonna assault the rim. They're gonna get into the paint as frequently as possible, especially with their lack of shooting now. So he's got some block upside.
Yeah, he could have 6-8 blocks in this game. So yeah, thoughts on him, and then the Arkansas guys.
Yeah, so Mannion, Wright, and Robbins they've basically embraced this little quote unquote bench mob thing where they hockey change all 3 of them in, and they kind of go give spurts for shorter time minutes for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just buying into Jerry. I don't know if it has anything to do with minutes and promises and stuff as much as it is just it worked one game and it's working pretty good. So Jerry's like, oh, let's just keep going with it, But the Arkansas side, dude, the non Ricky Council, Anthony Black, Devo Davis, if it's not one of those 3 guys, it is a terrifying play. Those are the only 3 guys you can trust to get minutes. And we know a lot of the usage is going to get funneled through those 3 guys. So in a different slate, I've played these guys on, different slates without Nick Smith, but Mikel's all right. I don't know if he's a guy that I want mainline exposure, because I don't want to just punt off $1,000 on him just not playing literally 3 minutes for no reason.
He could start and bowl someone over on the first possession and sit the rest of the game.
Muss is Yeah, probably getting close to his wits end. So I'd be more inclined to be overweight to him in a GPP format more than I would just want to, one line him.
Yeah. All right, we're halfway home here, so just want to mention again, we're running a promo right now, Boynton 15 promo code for the next 30 days for new members. It includes the Saber Sim Optimizer package. We'll have a playbook, core plays, and everything for all the slates from here on out for college basketball, and that also gets you access to all of the other sports. Let's move on, Gavin. Providence at Creighton. Back to the Big East here. Providence 29th at KenPom, Creighton 19th. He's got this Creighton 76-71, so some points expected here. Overall game thoughts. I think Providence might have an argument for the best transfer class in the country with Hopkins and Devin Carter. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of insane. Like Ed Coolidge, what he does with these transfers. I mean, dude, he made Al Durham look like a real dude, and Al Durham is a full blown pumpkin. Like, Devin Carter, from South Carolina, dude? He was nothing at South Carolina. He played 20 minutes a game, if that. And yeah, Ed Cooley is one of the best coaches in the country. It's incredible what he's done. They have one of the nation's longest winning streaks. They got 9 straight wins following that TCU loss, including beating UConn and a Marquette team that I raised my hand and say I was wrong on being down on them to come into the year because, damn, that offense is terrifyingly good somehow. I don't know what deal Shaka made with the devil over the offseason, but that offense looks great. So yeah, this I think is a really sneaky game that probably goes a little overlooked in the context of the slate. I didn't find myself playing as many of these guys, but the more I thought about it, I was like, I could definitely see this game get up and down. Providence is going to push. Both these teams are pretty efficient offensively. So yeah, I think one that we probably pay a little bit more attention to than what just kind of the blind ownership projections are going to say.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting game stack game more because both coaches just want to play their 5 guys the entire game, right? So you're getting 35 minutes out of 8+ guys, which, I mean, the floors are high. We do have Jared Bynum. I think he's on the doubtful side, Gavin, for Providence, which brings Noah Locke and Alan Breed back into play for cheap. We saw both of those guys have good games last Saturday when Bynum missed and actually weren't as owned as I thought they would be, especially Breed. His price hasn't moved. He's going to play upper 20 minutes, maybe 30 as a good punt piece. Noah Locke, more of a scoring reliant shooter, but in a pace-up game against Creighton where they're expected to score over 70 points. I think both those guys are definitely in play. I think Locke, interesting, contrarian budget option here. Thoughts there, and then thoughts on any of the Creighton guys, if any of them stands out at their price points. I think they're all priced about right, except for maybe Nembhard might be cheap coming off what I think was his best game of the year.
Yeah, he was great when he's hunting for a shot. I mean, that team, looks so much better too because you can't just kind of blanket Baylor Shireman as much. But yeah, I think Locke and Breed, I would definitely prefer those guys over an Uzan. I think, given game environment, given injury in front of them, Bynum has an abdominal issue. I don't think he plays. He's got the abdominal issue on top of, he was banged up with a thigh injury earlier this year. He just hasn't quite been healthy. He just had those nicks and bumps. But yeah, interesting here with Providence is another one of these teams, 13th highest frequency finishing at the rim. So it's another game where Kalkbrenner has some good block upside. You just wish that he was getting a little more shots. And Ed Cooley's got 97 different defensive sets to run out there from, matchup zone to 1-3-1 to press to box and one. He'll throw the kitchen sink at him. So yeah, I think you're right in that Nembhard's definitely cheap. But yeah, Creighton, they've kind of had these Creighton guys at the same prices all year, and it's hard. Whereas Tennessee has 8 good guys, Creighton's got 5, but you never really know where the the full usage that game is coming from. It can come from Nemhard. We've seen Kaluma, Chuck, and obviously Baylor Shireman can throw it up there. So
I will say
probably not as much Creighton for me outside of Nemhard and Kalkbrenner, but definitely want to look at Breed and Noah Locke here.
Yeah, I will say super encouraging to see Kalkbrenner play 38 out of 40 minutes last game after battling what we think was mono in December. So, I mean, if Kalk's going to play 36 plus, those are the times where he can really, really shatter a slate with rebound block upside. But yeah, wish he was shooting more. I think he's a fun contrarian spend here. I don't think many people will click him, and they're implied for almost 80 points here. Let's move on. Interesting spot. Carolina at Louisville. Carolina 25th at KenPom. Louisville 275. KenPom's got it 80 to 65 UNC. 275th.
275, man.
We talked on the ACC preview how we thought that Louisville was clearly the worst team in the ACC, and they're proving us right. We could talk forever about how awful their coach is, but I actually bet them here. I bet Louisville plus 14.
Can you imagine?
Plus 14. Hey, they've covered 4 in a row. Just because these spreads are kind of getting a bit out of hand, I think. Also, we have Armando Bacot and Pete Nance on the doubtful side of questionable, which I would say that opens up a good amount of usage, Gavin. Thoughts on what that does if Bacot and Nance are out here as far as game environment, what you think UNC does?
Yeah, the Nance back, I think he's on the doubtful side, and I'm pretty sure Bacot's out, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. Bacot's played through these ankle injuries before, dude. But they also had to say that his X-rays were negative, thankfully. I mean, that sounds like it's pretty serious ankle that you don't just come back from in a couple days. So, yeah, if neither are going to play, then Jalen Washington's the easiest play to slate and the first guy you just put in. Whether or not he's going to nuke like he did last time, or what he's going to do 3 games ago when he fouled 3 times in 4 minutes, will remain to be seen. But in a one lineup scenario, you got to play him. In a 150 scenario, how much do you think he's owned? 60, 70%?
I hope it's that low. I think he's pretty much a free square.
I mean, he should be 80+%. So I would just jam him in there.
Literally, the only way that he fails is if he fouls early. Which he could.
True. Yeah. So you're basically playing fouls if you don't play him.
Yeah. But besides him, Caleb Love. So what's the over under on Caleb Love shot attempts in this game? About 18.5, 20.
Louisville's going to make it kind of ugly and slow. I think he's getting 20 here.
Yeah. So 20 shots at 7K. Are you interested in Caleb Love? He's been kind of struggling lately, which has brought his price down to 7K. He was up in the mid 8s with RJ Davis, which is where we see him here. Thoughts on the rest of UNC, and then are there any plays on the Louisville side that interest you? We've seen Ellis start to pass the ball a bit more. 60% assist rate last 3 games. His price is still up there. But with those assists have kind of come the emergence of Mike James, the freshman. Was kind of toiling after a hot start to the season. But with L. Ellis realizing that he has teammates, James is kind of taking advantage of that. And he's also in that mid 5K range.
Yeah, 3 in a row for Mike James. First just on UNC. Yeah, RJ Davis is just such a better guard than Caleb Love. It's so much more efficient, better 2-way guy. It pains me to have to consider Love for a main line, but he's just a little too cheap in this spot where, RJ's more of a contrarian spend up. Leakey's, I don't think Leakey's that bad. He's hunting his shot a little more this year. And without those 2 guys, 6.2, he could definitely get there. Louisville, is apt to kick it around plenty. And then, the Mike James versus a Jamin Brakefield decision point is one that I had to think about. It's hard to get a better matchup than like a UNC team when you're at home without two of their better defenders. So yeah, I think James definitely in play for a main line. And then if you God, this Louisville rotation, dude. I'm not playing L. Ellis all year at 8.2K. I don't care if he's playing a blind school. Like if I'm going to lose money on it, I'm going to lose money on it. But yeah, if you want to take like a stab at like a Sidney Curry, a trainer, I think they're more game stack pieces than one-offs. It would be like if you wanted to do a Love, James, or something like an RJ, Mike James, Leaky, and then go one more with like a Curry or a trainer or Lands or something like that. But I don't know if I'm just trying to get to him on a one-off basis.
Yeah, I think James is the only guy that I'm going to play from Louisville. And then it's going to be Washington and then possibly Love for me. I see my little sister's in the chat. Happy birthday, Michelle. Her birthday's tomorrow.
Dang, 23. Happy birthday, Michelle.
Let's move on to a really good game here. Kansas State at TCU. I know
no
you
wall
and I have
officially.
talked about it. What?
No wall officially.
Okay. So Wall's out for Wisconsin. Yep. I know you and I have talked about this game off air a bunch. Kansas State 23rd. Wow, they're all the way up to 23rd at Ken Pom. TCU 31st, coming off that just heartbreaking loss at Texas during the week. They were up 18 in the second half and just pissed that game away. They're back home here. Ken Pom's got it TCU 74-72. I don't know what the current line is. I got TCU at -3.5, so I am on the TCU bounce back here. I think they play really well. I mean, no one's been higher on Kansas State than Gavin and I, but I think this is the time to hop off and to hop on to the Horned Frogs here. What do you think?
Yeah, what is this? Two of the 10 best point guards in college basketball. Like this is good. This is going to be a sick matchup. Both of these teams are top 10 in terms of their frequency and getting to the rim. And I just trust TCU's physicality much more than I do a K-State team still down in guessing for this game. So I'm also on TCU. I took the 4. I think it's still all right at 4.5. Once it gets to 5, it's starting to get a little dicier because you're probably playing the free throw game. But K-State. I mean, I think the stat I gave to you last slate was like K-State was the third best offense in the country, or the best offense in the country since December 4th, and the third best team on Bart Torvik. Like just an insane tear that they went on. But they're off their worst 2-point shooting performance of the season versus an Oak State team that didn't even have Moussa Cisse in there. So that to me is a signal that we could be seeing the top of the hill for K-State. But yeah, like this entire matchup is likely going to be decided who wins at the rim. And I just trust TCU at home with way more physical guys, much more than a potentially fat and happy K-State team off those big 4 wins in a row.
Yeah, trust me, I know that they missed a bunch of twos because they played Keontae Johnson on that slate. The only one in the queue with Keontae Johnson, and he fucks off for me. Let's talk about the DFS plays here. I think there are a bunch of them in play. You talked about the 2 studs for K-State, Marquise Noel up at 10-2. But man, he is playing like arguably the best point guard of the country. Him and Jalen Pickett, I think, are the top 2 by far. 50% assist rate, 25% shot rate, playing it every minute, 3-point upside, just a tough road matchup here. I think I'd rather play him than Key Johnson, just with the strength of TCU's interior. I'm not sure if you would agree, but I think I'm more interested in the TCU side, especially those guys in the mid-7s, Damian Baugh, Emmanuel Miller. We've seen Baugh control the ball more than Miles. Miles is playing off the ball as basically like a shooter only right now. Ball's got a 51% assist rate last 3 games. The shot rate's up to 18%. He's another guy in the mid-7s that I think you have to consider. And then Emmanuel Miller, we've been trying to play this guy for years, right, Gav? But they were holding him, 22, 26 minutes. But he's finally seeing this year, he's into the low mid-30s. I mean, the only thing holding him back previously was the lower minutes. So I think the ceiling is good on Miller if he's going to continue to see 30 plus. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Miller's going to be huge just to be able to guard Key. Him and Baugh are elite defenders. And it'll be interesting to see like if Jamie Dixon tosses Mike Miles on Noel or if they toss Baugh on Noel, because that's a much different matchup for Noel for me personally. Yeah, you don't want to be having Damian Baugh guard you. And it's crazy that, yeah, you're right. He has taken more of the lead guard role. But I don't even know what to make of that. It's like, it's because Mike Miles is still like a true point guard, quote unquote. But Baugh's been better for him. So that's fine. I'm good with both of those guys. If I have to go one, I'm probably just taking Baugh. But yeah, Miller has legit 40 fantasy point upside in this spot. So I think they're both definitely fine. Nobody's going to play Eddie Lampkin, huh? A little expensive, but like I said, no one guessing. He's going to be getting Iola underneath. I mean, Freddie could have some good success here. Or Eddie. Why did I call him Freddie? Eddie Lampkin could have some good success here. You're muted, you mutt.
Yeah, old Freddie Lampkin. Yeah, my note in the playbook was that Lamp is eating rebounds like Snickers bars right now. He's got 26% rebound rate last 3 games. I think he's fine. Just, man, I wish that he was like, if he was in the same price category as like a Breakfield, I think I would play Lampkin over him. Any last thoughts here?
Yeah, think about K-State. Just on the last Eddie point is, you play West Virginia, you play Texas, you play Baylor, you play Oak State without Cisse. That's like 0 actual post players that you're really having to worry about. Now you got to deal with Eddie. That's pretty tough. I think Cam Carter's also in play. He's not the most inspiring guy ever, but in a GPP context. And then what about Iola? He's still 5'2" or 4'2". GPP worthy, or are we out?
I think I'm hopping off the Iola train above 4K. Just kind of context of the slate thing. Like you're playing him over a Breed, over a guy that we'll get to, like a Brandon Suggs, guys like that.
Yeah,
I just don't.
Fair.
The foul risk plus the lack of upside. You're on the road at TCU. I think there's more risk than reward in that spot. I agree with our good friend Click Skajeski in the chat. The Kansas State TCU guys are going to be elite leverage plays. Yeah, I mean that's why I brought up the mid-7 TCU guys. I think are my favorite contrarian spends of the entire slate. I think Baugh and Miller are both live for 40 plus here. Let's move on. UCF Tulane, interesting inclusion on the slate, but both teams playing well. UCF 38 to Ken Palm, coming off that double overtime that just, I just grabbed my ankles when I went to overtime in that game. As we had Jalen Young, he fouled out in 20 minutes like a dipshit, and everyone else was holding other guys. Tulane 85th to Ken Palm. Ken Palm's got this UCF 72-71. I grabbed the Tulane +1. Gavin, as I'm talking here, can you pull up the live line? Because I thought it was going towards Tulane, and I don't want to give out a number that's way gone. The news with this one, Darius Johnson, questionable. Gavin thinks doubtful. I think he said that he had a boot on. Michael Durr is out, had surgery. So we saw the minutes for UCF really condense around 5 guys. You got Taylor Hendricks, the projected first-round pick, freshman, big man. CJ Kelly, who played really well in their last game. Ithiel Horton, who's in his 9th year of basketball. Jalen Young playing point for Darius Johnson. And then Brandon Suggs playing a lot of small ball 4 and 5. With Durr out, I think, or with Durr and Johnson out, I think that you can play at least one of these UCF guys. They're all underpriced. It's a great matchup, I think, for Hendricks. Gavin, when I was digging last night, Tulane gets their shots blocked a ton, 356th nationally. Hendricks is like an athletic big man with some block upside. So he's not going to project well. I think he's more of like, like if you're down early and you want to pivot or something, I think Hendricks has got sneaky upside here. And then the cheap guys, Young was chalk on that. I think it was Wednesday slate, foul trouble. I don't think that that's going to be a routine thing. I think that he'll be fine here. He's still under 5K, and people will be scared to click him because he burned everyone in that
Even
double
though he
overtime
double
game.
the game before.
Yeah. So I think Young is super interesting as a contrarian play. And then Suggs is going to be a core play for me. Played 48 of 50 minutes in that double overtime game. The usage isn't great, but I mean, he's going to play a ton and he's only 4.2. Any thoughts there? And were you able to grab that Tulane live number?
Yeah, it's still -2. I think that's fine. I took a small piece of it. I really thought we were going to get pick or plus money, but with the Darius Johnson injury, Jalen Cook healthy now, like just looks like a completely different team. But let me ask you, out of the 10 starters in this game, is there anybody not in play?
I think there are less guys in play on the Tulane side. I think like it's Cook and Forbes probably for me, mostly on the Tulane side, just because the usage is funneled so much towards those guys. But I mean, you're right. Like James and Cross also play a ton. I don't I don't trust Kevin Cross. Has there ever been a slate where we've played him and he hasn't fouled?
No, he shits the bed every time he's on a slate. But yeah, it's like, I think in a GPP sense, you're you're not Xing out anybody from this game, and you probably want to be over the field.
Yeah, no, I think this game is great. Any thoughts on what I was saying about the UCF guys? It just seems that they're gonna basically condense their rotation mostly around those 5, and they're all priced to play. Really, do you have any favorites besides Suggs? Let's say.
I think I'm going to play Ith Horton. Like you see the uptick the last 2 games without Darius Johnson. That's just so hard to ignore. Like he's not going to give you as much peripherally, I think, as like a CJ Kelly will. But for the 500 discount, I think I'm just going to take the shot rate of Ith Horton the last 2 games and believe in that.
Yeah. Let me check the chat real quick.
I think you need at least 1 UCF, if not 2, in your main lineup.
Yeah. Anthony G in the chat says, "Is 3 Tulane guys too many?" I would say yes. I think
because you're paying out the ass for them, unless you're using like a Jaden Coleman or something.
If I'm game stacking, I would rather take 3 UCF and bring it back with Cook or something. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to last game. We're over an hour here. Pitt at Georgia Tech. This is an island game, which makes it a bit tricky because there is news in this game. Pitt 66 at KenPom. Ja Tech 128. KenPom's got this 72-70 Pitt. Gavin and I were on Georgia Tech before all this news came out. They're dealing with like the flu or something. I think Jalen Moore is expected back, but Javon Franklin and Davon Smith both expected to miss here, Gavin. Even before those guys were out, we've seen Georgia Tech run a tight ship. I think we could see 6 guys total play for Georgia Tech in this game, with the highest priced guy outside of Jalen Moore being 6'2" Miles Kelly. Thoughts on the situation there, how you should deal with it being an island game? I mean, I think these guys are out, but just how you deal with stuff like that in general. Talk about that for the people.
Yeah, so Jalen Moore's back. He was thigh injury, so he wasn't illness related, but Franklin and Davon definitely are. So the way that I typically do it is that, I mean, when you come to the 11 o'clock games, or I guess that'd be 2 p.m. Eastern games for you East Coast mutts, but if you come to the 11 o'clock games and you still don't have concrete injury news on the Georgia Tech guys and whether or not they play, I don't think you can play them. Because if they do end up playing, you are stone dead holding them in the island game. So I would rather just not deal with it. Now you could get the news in the hour from the 11 a.m. start to the noon start, but like with how much good value is on this slate, like you're going to have to be correct on your value. And if you're using value guys that see their minutes evaporate because we see guys play who they were thought were ill, it's going to be tough. Now I'm with you. I don't think they play. I don't think they would have announced it that far ahead of the game if
Right.
it was just like, oh, they got the sniffles, but they're going to play. They're probably pretty fucking sick. So I would approach it that way, but you also got to watch. You can't just, I don't think you can venture in to 12 o'clock just assuming they're going to be out if we don't have any more news beyond what we've already heard.
Yeah. All right. So given that, so we've got Miles Kelly, the sophomore, playing really, really well right now. Shooting the ball a ton. We've seen his shot rate spike lately. And without Smith and those guys, I think we see him take a ton of shots here. I'm trying to pull up the data sheet that we have from our friend Matt Gajeski. Yeah, played 39 minutes last game, shot rate 22%. The peripherals lag a bit, but at 6'2", I think you can play Miles Kelly. And then a big decision point is going to be with the other guards. You got Lance Terry, Debo Coleman, and I think Kyle Sturdivant is going to be pushed back into the rotation here. Terry's at 4'7", Debo 4'3", Sturdivant 4'4". Do you have any thoughts on those three guys? And do you have a favorite? I kind of view them. Terry is the scoring reliant guy, but 20% shot rate under 5K is awesome. Debo seems like the safest to not kill you, but doesn't have the upside of Terry. And then Sturdivant just isn't a guy that I've played for the 6 years that he's been at Tech, but that could just be a blind spot.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Debo, Terry, Sturdivant. And then what about old Rodney? If Moore's coming back from a thigh injury, do we think he just thrusts into 35 minutes? Rodney's going to play a decent amount here. Here's my rub with this game is that, dude, this total is 143.5. I'm betting that under. That's absurd. That is ludicrous. How is Georgia Tech going to fucking score here?
Yeah, I think playing 2 Georgia Tech might be a bit scary for me just because, I took their team total under, Gavin, when I saw that news. I think that I'm just going to stick with that, like the under 71. But, yeah, the thing with Howard, we saw him play 13 minutes randomly last game. Do they need him when Fed is not on the court? I don't think they do because Pitt runs that 4-guard lineup with Nike and Elliott and Cummings and Burton and Hinson, right? I just don't want to play Howard like if he's going to get schemed off the court when I've got Lance Terry, who I know is playing 35 minutes right there.
True.
So any thoughts on playing 2 of these guys because they're all underpriced? And then is there anyone on Pitt that interests you? I think Pitt prices are kind of fully loaded right now.
Yeah, I think I'm out on Pitt, but man, playing 2 Georgia Tech. Oh, I guess you can, but you better be right. You can't do it without the news. You better be right on the news. So, like, if you want to play Terry and Coleman,
what about Terry versus like a Jalen Young versus Uzan versus Noah Locke? Because they're all.
I think I'm going to take. I think I want the UCF guys over. Like, I want Ith Horton over Kelly. I want Suggs over Terry and Coleman, and definitely Sturdivant. I think I want Young over all them too. Like, I think I like the UCF guys a little bit more in this value spot than GT. I'm just not the biggest Georgia Tech guy myself, frankly. But yeah when you have that few bodies going to be out on the court, you should get decent floors from those guys. You probably don't get burned even by playing them.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all of the games. Before we log off, let's discuss a few things first. We just did one there with like the mid-4 guys. Why don't you give me like your favorite 8K plus play, your favorite guy in the 7Ks, and then besides like Suggs and the UNC guy, your favorite play under 5K?
All right, so for 8K, I guess I'll just rank. No, I'm going Turk 1, TJD 2, but I'm probably going to play both. I think Omer would be my third in that bucket.
Yeah, I think Omer is a super fun play. So 8K plus, let me pull it up here. I'm with you on the two spends. I th- I think an interesting pivot. Who was I looking at earlier? Oh yeah, Kalkbrenner. Like if Kalk is truly fully back, which him playing 38 minutes last game shows me that he is. Those like since he doesn't shoot that much, his path to smashing is being in there a ton and having that block upside, right? So him playing 35 plus, I think, is an interesting low owned pivot right at that 8K range. Probably gets lost in the shuffle here. What about since that 7K range is so loaded? I know it's tough to pick one. Your favorite? Let's go like with a contrarian 7K play, like a guy that you don't think is going to pop up in optimals.
Kadari.
Yeah, I think mine is Emmanuel Miller / Damian Baugh. I think, man, those guys are in awesome spots. I think I lean Miller personally just because of like the peripheral floor, but I really like him there. And then favorite under 5K play that isn't the two guys that we already gave away as core values.
All right, hold on. Allen Breed.
Allen Breed, yeah. I mean, we saw him come in under owned last Saturday. Had the foul game last time out, which kind of kept his minutes down. And I'm looking at projections around the industry. I think if he plays 28, 30 minutes at 4K in that game environment, I think he can definitely get there. I'll go Jalen Young as mine. I think that he really gets lost here. I think everyone's going to click Lance Terry at the same spot. I think Terry is a really good player. Like, don't get me wrong. He can play 35 minutes. I might have him on my main team, but Jalen Young there at the same price when he just burned everyone. I don't think that he's going to be a fouler long term, and is just in an awesome pace up spot where people are grabbing Suggs at 4-2 and might not want to play like two cheap guys from UCF. So if you're down early and you're holding Lance Terry, I love just going to Jalen Young there late in the slate. All right, let me check the chat real quick for any questions. Breed rules, Key Johnson, contrarian play. Gav Gajeski's asking about Key Johnson as a contrarian play. I'm kind of scared of the TCU front court with him at 8.8, but what do you think?
I don't know this slate. Look, the thing is, he's going to be what 5 to 7% owned. So play 15 and be 3 times the field, and you still don't have to get a ton of exposure to him.
I think I'd rather play Kalkbrenner for 800 less. I think I'd rather play Kalkbrenner.
And getting the Emmanuel Miller draw is not the most warm and fuzzy ever, but Keontae Johnson's Keontae Johnson, bro. He's the preseason SEC player 2 years ago before his issue, and he's playing even better this year than he was previously. So, yeah, easy guy to get over the field on. I think if you want to go that route. Look, he's got big upside in a game that can get really up and down. So if you want to game stack him, I think that's probably okay.
Cool. Any last thoughts on the slate before we get out of here? We got about 45 minutes until lock.
Nope. Just God, don't fucking burn me, Georgia Tech, for the love of God, because I'm not playing those assholes.
Yeah, I think my last thoughts would be with a lot of the plays that we talked about lean towards the end of the slate. There are a bunch of swap opportunities. We talked about a couple of them. There are guys that we know that are going to be popular that you can definitely get off of if you get off to a slow start. But yeah, it was good to be back on the show, Gav. We'll probably be back Saturdays from here on out, I would assume, if we can get you up in time. Thanks for joining again. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Boynton 15 is the Run Pure code for new members. Playbooks every day. Core plays. Our Discord's active. It's a ton of fun from here through early April. So for Gav, for myself, at Steve Boynton VT on Twitter, we'll see you guys next time.